Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is a session called Future Hydrogen Society in Asia and the Pacific. Thanks for joining. Please, we would like to invite you actively participate in this event in order to make it interactive. There is a Q&A. Please type your questions in Q&A box. And also, please participate in our polling questions. We have prepared 2 polling questions for you, and results will be announced at the end of this session. Let's open this session with the opening remarks from Tetsuchi Sanobi, who is the Dean and CEO of the Asian Development Bank Institute, which is the Tokyo-based think tank of the Asian Development Bank that promotes the realization of prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia and the Pacific through policy research and capacity building.
Okay. Thank you, Dina. So good afternoon from Tokyo. ADBI welcome you all to the deep dive workshop on future hydrogen society in Asia and the Pacific. I'd like to extend my warm regards to our partners, including Korea Energy Agency, USAID, and ADB, for the opportunity to contribute to this important event, as we did in the previous 2 years. Last November, representatives of nearly 200 nations attended the 26th Conference of the Parties, or COP26, and signed the Glasgow Climate Pact, calling for actions to meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. The clean energy transition is critically important for reaching the net zero target by mid-century and achieving the sustainable development goals. In response to the challenges posed by climate change, green hydrogen has emerged as a clean and sustainable alternative to conventional energy systems. An inclusive transition to green hydrogen is expected to bring benefits of clean energy to various sectors of economies, boosting growth and creating decent jobs, reinforcing climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts, and providing more than 770 million people with electricity access. Asia and the Pacific accounted for 73% of the global investment in hydrogen planned for 2020. The region is leading the world in the transition to a hydrogen society. Many countries in the region, such as Australia, Korea, India, and Japan, are proposing national level hydrogen strategies. This deep dive workshop highlights the experiences and the challenges of transition from conventional energy sources to green hydrogen. In the first session, experts will present case studies of green hydrogen projects and the economic models for reducing costs. In the second session, panelists from Korea, People's Republic of China, and Japan will provide insights into developing and implementing national hydrogen strategies. I'd like to extend my gratitude to the speakers and panelists and moderators. And thanks also to ADBI team, Dina, Sakshi, Veronica, for their immense support and efforts dedicated to this workshop. ADBI will keep building on this work. We are now calling for papers on future hydrogen society in Asia and the Pacific. The deadline is the end of this month. Please check ADBI call for paper webpage. Authors of selected papers will be invited to the policy discussions and making policy briefs with think tanks and universities researchers from across the world in the coming Think 7, an official engagement group of the Group of 7, which ADBI will host next year as part of Japan's G7 2023 presidency. I mean, ADBI will make T7 open to researchers in both G7 member countries and non-member countries, and develop truly research-based policy proposals. Today, I encourage the audience to actively participate in the deep dive workshop. Please type your questions, which will be discussed today if time allows, and will guide ADBI's future work on this important topic. We greatly appreciate your participation. Thank you very much for your attention. Ina, back to you.
Dean Tetsushi Sanobe, thank you so much for excellent welcoming remarks. I'm happy to introduce moderator for first session, Case Studies Economic Model, Kaoru Agina. He's Principal Energy Specialist at ADB. He has over 25 years of experience in energy sector, specializing in power, gas, oil, and renewable energy.
Thank you, Dina. Okay, the first session for the case studies and economic models. So now the green hydrogen is treated as a promising energy career. However, it is still at the early stage of the development. So biggest issue is how to reduce the production cost. So this is a crucial step for the further scale up. In that sense, the suitable economic models and the approaches should be important for each stage of the hydrogen development. So what approaches are available at this stage or for the future? So we'd like to discuss it today. For this purpose, we have 3 guest speakers. So each of them will make a presentation. The first person is Mr. Nikhil Moge. He's a KPMG India's partner. So he has a broad experience in the many projects for the oil and gas businesses over the world. So now the Mr. Moge is helping the ADB projects for the advanced biofuels and the green hydrogen in India. So today, Nikhil, so could you tell us about the green hydrogen opportunities in the world? So you have 8 minutes for presentation. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Ogina-san. Sakshi, if you could just go to the next slide. So this basically, I have a couple of slides here to discuss about some of the key projects around the globe, and also some of the economic models and what are the key considerations for looking at the costs when it comes to cost of hydrogen. So just as a background, we all know that the world is moving towards net zero, and there are several commitments being made by the companies, companies and countries. We have seen that over 67% of global GDP is now covered by net zero targets. Countries are defining their strategies to how to achieve net zero, and decarbonization is one of the major factors in that particular journey. There are more than 100 countries who have committed to these net zero targets by 2050. There are several companies, energy majors, over 56% of top 250 companies have acknowledged that there is a risk of climate change, and there is a time and need for action. Apart from that, there are several investments that have been committed to achieving these net zero targets. So all in all, this slide talks about several statistics around net zero and decarbonization, and hydrogen plays a major important role in achieving that net zero. Moving on to the next slide, it basically talks about which are the countries which are looking at developing hydrogen plants, and there are several targets that have been set both on the supply side and demand side. If we talk about some of the countries which I have mentioned here, United Kingdom on the supply side, they're talking of scaling up of green hydrogen manufacturing capacities to 1 gigawatt per year by 2025. There are several demand side interventions in terms of defining investments in industrial decarbonization, and there's a fund that has been defined very clearly. Similarly, Japan is also talking of setting targets for green hydrogen by 2030. There have been certain, on the demand side, there have been certain government support that have been defined in terms of PPP and investment subsidies. Similarly, on the European Union, there are projects that are being committed to 40 gigawatt of electrolyzer capacity to be set up. There are special funds that have been earmarked for clean green hydrogen, and there are industrial quotas that have been defined for renewable energy. In terms of Germany, again, there have been investments that have been planned, and there are several purchase obligations that have been committed by some of these companies. So whole in all, there are several initiatives that are being planned by various countries. These are going to grow in near future. If you can just go to the next slide, Sakshi. What I'll do is I'll maybe talk about specific case studies, and here I've listed some 12 case studies which are basically in terms of what are the pilots or projects that are being carried out in around the globe. So, most of these projects and pilots are around blending of hydrogen. So if you could see some of the projects in Markham, which is in US, and the second project, which is in UK. These are all projects with respect to blending of hydrogen for various purposes. Blending is done in pipelines, and blending is also done for residential purposes. There are few projects that are being taken in UK, where they are talking of blending of hydrogen in the NAT grid. There are few projects which are being talked about for blending of natural gas and renewable energy-based hydrogen into power plants. Few projects are with respect to blending of hydrogen, which is being powered by solar power, and facilities that are being powered by green hydrogen. So all in all, I don't want to get into these specific projects, but the theme of all these projects are blending of hydrogen into the pipelines, usage of hydrogen into power plants, and also usage of clean hydrogen in various other aspects. In my next slide, I'll talk about specific instances where the hydrogen is being used and are being talked about. The first use case is predominantly on green ammonia, which is to be co-fired in coal power plants. It's basically the green ammonia which is produced, it is co-fired in coal power plants to reduce the use of coal. Some of the projects that are, as a case examples we can talk about is in Japan and in Australia, where they are talking of starting usage of green ammonia into the coal-based power plant. So that is one of the use case that we have seen in the projects around those. The second use case is around hydrogen-based CCGT power generation, where hydrogen, or basically the hydrogen blended with natural gas or ammonia, which is used as a fuel in gas turbines and combined cycle gas turbines. Specific projects around these is around 440 megawatt of CCGT plant which is being talked about in Netherlands, and Australia has also allocated a certain amount to help new gas-fired generators to run by hydrogen. So these are some of the projects that are being talked about when it comes to hydrogen-based CCGT power and generation. Then there are projects around hydrogen-based fuel cells for backup and off-grid. Hydrogen fuel cells are also one of the predominant areas of work that is being undertaken by several institutes, where hydrogen fuel cells can be used to provide backup power to ensure power supply. Some of the projects that are being talked about, one is in Kenya and one is in South Africa, where the hydrogen fuel cells are being used which are being deployed for backup power. And the third and the fourth and the last one is power to hydrogen gas storage. This is for long-term, large scale. This is still in nascent stages. This is not yet commercially proven, but there are several power to gas projects that are being deployed across the globe in pilot stage, where they are planning to have hydrogen and hydrogen-based fuels that can serve as means to store electricity. So these are some of the projects that are being talked about. Some are in nascent stages, some are in pilot stages. Few are in commercial stages across the globe. Moving on to the economic side of the cost of hydrogen. I have a couple of slides. Actually, if you could just go to the next slide. Yeah. So the cost of green hydrogen is evolving, and if we see in terms of dollar per kg, we are looking at and this is in Indian context. If you're talking at 2022 pre-policy levels, we are talking of around $4.5 per kg of hydrogen cost. And if we can have certain policies come in, which is basically reducing the supply charges, reducing the banking costs, incentives for segregation of demand, bulk deployment, and improving efficiencies, the cost will reduce from $4.5 to say around $3.5, and it can further then reduce to say around $2.5, which is the cost of gray hydrogen. So there are several initiatives and incentives needs to be provided to reduce this cost. Now, which are these incentives? I'll talk about in the next slide, which I have done basically breakup of this. So if you see the RE generation module, the cost is somewhere around $2 per kg of green hydrogen, and there are several elements to this cost: solar modules, BOP, interest cost, ROC, and O&M. So the major factor is the cost of return on equity, which is the element of efficient investment structuring. So if we can have an investment which is very structured, then we can reduce this cost. The second cost is basically the network cost, which is the transportation cost. And the third cost is for the cost of electrolyzer module, which is around, say, $1. So the major costs here would be around interest cost again and the balance of plant. So if we can have efficient design, technical configuration, efficient procurement, so on and so forth, the cost can actually go down, and we can look at a cost of, say, around $2.5 to $3 per kg. Obviously, there have been talks of getting this cost down to $1 as well, but we are still a long way. It's a step-by-step process, and we need to address some of these major issues to come to that costs. I think this is it from my side. If you could just go to the next slide. I'm through with my presentation, Ogina-san.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nikhil. We really appreciate introducing the many cases in the different locations. So it was quite interesting to know some of them are already stepping the commercial stage. Okay, so now move on to the next person. Dr. Mi Tian is a lecturer at the Department of the Engineering, University of the Exeter, UK. Dr. Chuan has been researching the hydrogen technology from the technical side, but she has also been looking into the broader context of the hydrogen cost, the emissions, and the social impacts in a comprehensive and systematic manner. So, Dr. Tian, so can you tell us about your presentation, which is a wind to hydrogen in the Southwest England?
Okay, thank you for introduction. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Hello, everybody. I'm Mi Tian. I'm a lecturer in engineering at the University of Exeter in Southwest England, in beautiful Cornwall and Devon area. So today I'm going to talk about one of my projects on wind to hydrogen in Southwest England, hopefully to show you what is happening here and we can learn from each other. Just a brief overview on the hydrogen policy development in the UK. So hydrogen becomes a really hot topic since 2019. The UK government committed to net zero commitment by 2050, and then the government released its 10-point plan for a green industry revolution, and in which the UK government announced the 5 gigawatt low carbon hydrogen production by 2050. Last year during summer, the UK also released finally its national hydrogen strategy, and also followed by net zero strategy. Few weeks ago, in April 2022, UK government doubled the low carbon hydrogen production from 5 gigawatt to 10 gigawatt in order to tackle current energy crisis we are experiencing around the world at the moment. A few weeks ago, the hydrogen strategy, the role of hydrogen is also being mentioned, included in the national energy security strategy. So from my point of view, in the future, hydrogen is really the heart of decarbonization of industry and the decarbonization of society. Is also going to benefit the national energy security. So if you look at the electricity generation in the UK, actually it's not really bad. Over 50% electricity are generated from renewable energy resources, including offshore wind, onshore wind, and solar energy. but the one of the problems for renewable energy is their intermittency. So if we look at this figure shows us the fluctuation between renewable energy production indicated by the red curve and the energy consumption, that is the gray curve, and we can see a big fluctuation and big gap. So actually only 50% renewable energy production over average. So there's a huge waste on here. So how can we make full use of the renewable generated energy? And that is the storage. We need, if we cannot store those renewable energy, we cannot make full use of it. So let's store it. That's why where hydrogen can really help. So if we look at the left-hand figure, we can see the role of battery and the hydrogen. People generally consider battery and hydrogen a competitor, but actually from my point of view, they apply in different areas. So hydrogen is really good for large scale, I mean gigawatt hours, and for large long-term over days, weeks, months, even seasonal storage at national grid scale, and which the other technology cannot really do. And if you look at the UK's future energy scenario, so the blue curve indicates hydrogen energy, and we can see a big role, big part hydrogen is going to play in this future energy scenario. And so therefore we developed a regional model in order to evaluate the wind power to X to hydrogen system. So this is the structure of the model, and we actually carried out a case study in Southwest England, and you can see this is the south part of the England map. The red area is our research region. So there's a couple of reasons why we select Southwest area, because first of course we are located, that's where our university located, and secondly the renewable energy in Southwest is massive ratio in the whole energy system. Over 60% of the energy in Southwest England from renewable energy resources. Therefore storage, large scale storage is a key at the moment. So this is one of the scenarios we designed, from offshore wind to produce hydrogen via electrolysis, and then hydrogen will be delivered via subsea pipelines, and then will be distributed to other pipelines using the current natural gas infrastructure, or goes to the underground seasonal salt caverns hydrogen storage. And then the main applications for this scenario is for home heating, replacing the natural gas. So after run the model, we selected the offshore wind farm, and you can see the red square indicates the location of the wind farm. The yellow line is the subsea pipelines, and the blue line is the pipelines, onshore pipelines. So the seasonal storage, underground storage is indoor site in this area. So and we evaluated the capacity, the cost, and we compared the natural gas cost and the hydrogen cost. Apparently, hydrogen is much more expensive. However, with the technology increases and the electricity price is dropping and the natural gas price is increasing, in the future is going to be comparable. And obviously, if you look at the carbon emission, 7% hydrogen carbon emission can be reduced by replacing natural gas with hydrogen. So hopefully in this, hopefully in this short presentation, I convinced you the replacing natural gas with hydrogen in Southwest and nationwide is feasible in terms of all sustainability and emission reduction, and would contribute to net zero goal. And also hydrogen could be successful heating solution for Southwest. And there's a lot of other issues we need to address, of course, but that's gone to another issue. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues and my students for contributing for this project. And thank you very much.
Dr. Tian, thank you very much for telling us the very specific, I think, the case. I mean, to use the wind power for the hydrogen in the entire value chains. So it was very interesting. Okay, so the next, let me introduce the next person, Dr. Haoran Zhang. He's a lecturer and assistant professor in at the Center for the Spatial Information Science at the University of Tokyo. He has also been researching the hydrogen development from the engineering side, but his research has been extended to the wider scope of the hydrogen societies or smart society through the use of the hydrogen. So today he will tell us about big data in the hydrogen society. So over to Dr. Zhang.
Thanks for the introduction. Today I will introduce the power of big data in promoting hydrogen society. And yes, and in the October 2020, Japan declared its intention to achieve a carbon neutral society by 2050. And Japan needs to achieve 100% electric source decarbonization by adopting, for example, like renewables, nuclear, for example, like carbon recycling and hydrogen, etc. And however, for the target of the non-electricity side, it would be quite ambitious and hard to realize because the government needs to give extraordinary support to the private sector to tackle its ambitious goal. It is always not easy to somehow control the end users to abandon cheaper traditional energy sources and then adopt relatively expensive and inconvenient sources to, in this case, to achieve this, a national strategy to promote the renewable sources technology and supply chain development is quite necessary to further reduce the cost and enhance the users' convenience. In this case, Japan has launched the Hydrogen Society strategy. And under the Hydrogen Society strategy, Japan promotes the utilization of the hydrogen with the framework. And in this framework, hydrogen will be adopted in several sectors of the society. For example, like hydrogen industry, nuclear industry, automobile and battery industries, shipping industries, and etc. And achieving this kind of a hydrogen society requires promoting the total integration of the, for example, like making, storing, and using the hydrogen. And in Japan, there has been already some good examples. For example, like in farm fuel cells for residential use, and Milan, the world's first fuel cell vehicle, and the introduction of the fuel cell buses on the Tokyo bus lines. However, currently there is a dual guide to achieve hydrogen society, and the case mentioned above more like just a kind of a project example, and the utilization scenarios of the hydrogen in users' daily life is still quite limited. And the Japanese government also made a very clear quantity target to promote a hydrogen society. For example, like future targets includes hydrogen cost of 20 Japanese yen per sphere, and an increase in number of the FCV from 200,000 in 2025 to 800,000 in 2030. The effort to achieve the target includes, for example, like expansion of the nationwide hydrogen stations and etc. And the policy innovations that FCV could reach the same level of the economy and convenience as the gasoline cars by 2020 by 2030, and the convenience would be increased by adding more hydrogen stations. And Japan currently has about 116 hydrogen stations, and has planned to increase the number to 320 by 2025. And by 2013, the Japanese government will include about 1,000 hydrogen stations. And but those number looks quite ambitious, and it would need a huge effort from the policymakers and the planners to find out the optimal layout of the hydrogen stations to maximize the convenience brought from those 100, for example, like 1,000 hydrogen stations. And in the traditional method, and the policymakers and the planners mainly based on the related laws and their own experience to decide the location of the station. And however, currently with the faster development of the big data technologies, we could make this kind of process smarter and more effective. And recently, we based on the Japanese law of the construction criteria and utilize the NLP technology to model the constraints of the hydrogen station construction, and then we use a language big data of the greater Tokyo area to automatically analyze where is allowed to build a hydrogen station. For example, like here is a result. We divided the construction condition into 5 levels. In level 5, as shown in right, there are no limitations in construction. But in level 1, as shown in blue, and there is not allowed to build a hydrogen station. And then we want to help the policymakers and the planners to answer where is suitable to build a hydrogen station. And based on the millions of users' mobile phone GPS data, we simulated the fading behavior and the detour distance for fading. For example, like we simulated 2 scenarios. And the first one is user will fill their vehicle when commuting by home. And the second scenario is user will fill their vehicles when commuting to the workplace. Based on this kind of simulation, we've given a potential layout of the hydrogen stations. We could compute the total detour distance for fading and evaluate the convenience degree increase. And based on the simulator, we did a kind of organization and finally found out the most suitable area for building stations. And all the optimal locations for building stations could meet the construction constraints from the law of the constraint criteria of the plan. And comparing the layout of the existing station, we found a big difference. And our results show that theoretically there is a big room for future improvement of the hydrogen station layout plan. And finally, we also did a kind of numerical simulation. And for the home to work filling scenario, if we adopt the optimal layout, the mean value of the detour distance is 3.6 kilometers. But for the existing layout, the detour distance is about 6.2 kilometers. And for the work to home filling scenario, for the optimal layout, the mean value of the detour distance is about 2 kilometers. But for existing layout, it's about 5.4 kilometers. And if we cite 3.5 kilometers is a kind of a threshold for acceptable detour distance, and the optimal layout can meet about 59% of users' requirements. but the existing layout can only meet about 35% of the users' requirement. And shorter than 17.5 kilometer distance, the optimal result always has the age. And therefore, this kind of result show the power of the big data in the future hydrogen society related policy making and planning. And thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zhang. So, and it was very, interesting, to know how to use the hydrogen, particularly for the purpose of the hydrogen station and the transport automobiles. So I think it suggested the future, the picture of the hydrogen society. Okay, now we'd like to go for the Q&A sessions. We have 6 to 7 minutes though, but thank you very much for some questions from the audience. So let me, pick up some question. The first, Nikhil. So now I think the oil and gas price, it has been soaring. So then do you have any other information of the production cost of the hydrogen? There's still, I think, the $2 per kg. I think there is kind of the benchmark, or now some of the cases go down, below this benchmark. Can you suggest such a cost? I think the others.
Yeah, so it's a good question, okay, and because the prices of gas have gone up, and anything to do with production of hydrogen through gas is definitely the prices are going to go up. The prices that we talked about was a very benchmark general prices. And but having said this, it's more to do with, if you're talking of green hydrogen, it's more to do with renewable energy prices. And if you can see reduction in renewable energy prices, there are a lot of chances that the production and prices of hydrogen can go down. Ogina-san?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nikhil. Okay, so next question is Dr. Tian. Okay, now the hydrogen, I think can be replaced with natural gas, you suggest. But what about the other usage? The hydrogen can be also applied for any, I think the marine, I think the transports, any ships and for those purposes. Can you suggest
thank you for
something?
Thanks for the questions. That's a really good question. So replacing natural gas is actually not a very new concept. It has been, for example, decades ago, the town gas used in the UK contain over 30% of hydrogen. So it already has been used. So people are more confident to develop this. And there's a few demonstration project and testing in the UK for replacing 20% or blending 20% hydrogen with natural gas. And soon it's going to be use 100% nitrogen to replacing natural gas for heating. I think there's a few reasons. First is natural gas, the price is going up, and most of I think over 80% of natural gas in the UK relies on imported resources, and which is the energy crisis we are experiencing at the moment. So this is most practical and economical solution for the current, emergent energy solutions for reduced carbon emission and to be independent from imported energy resources. And secondly, in terms of the transport, we can see the battery now, the electrical car has been, leading the transport market. However, for the heavy weighted vehicles, for the international ships, hydrogen is gonna to play a role, but there's a lot of technical barriers there in applying hydrogen in transports. For example, still in hydrogen, the space, it need to occupy a lot of space, hydrogen itself and the fuel cell, for example. So there's more technical challenges comparing with replacing natural gas. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chen. Okay, because of the time constraint, this is the last question for the Dr. Zhang. So you're talking about, use of the hydrogen for the FCV. So nowadays, the electric vehicles also, the emerging, worldwide. How do you see what is your view, to compete this kind of FCV with electric vehicle? Hydrogen or such electric vehicle?
Yes, thanks for the question. We do a very similar work, focus on the BEV, battery electric vehicle, and using the big GPS data to simulate the electric consumption for daily travel. And based on our results, we found that the hydrogen FCV is more flexible for which can meet more users' daily commuting. And of course, for the flexibility, I think FCV is much better than BEV based on our research. But of course, maybe the one important issue about the FCV is the cost. If we can reduce the hydrogen cost, I think FCV has more advantages than BEV. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Zhang. And we have some other questions though, but because of time constraints, we cannot answer all the questions though, but we really appreciate having your active participation this discussion. So now I think the time for the second session. So I think over to Dina.
Thank you very much, speakers and co-hosts, for excellent session. I would like to invite the moderator of the next panel session, Dr. Sitaram, my colleague, Principal Knowledge Sharing and Services Specialist, and he's also visiting professor at the Center for Spatial Information Science at the University of Tokyo in Japan, and also special advisor to East Japan Railway Company for India, High-Speed Rail.
Thank you, Dina. This is a deep dive workshop. So in the second part, we will try to dive a bit deeper. We have three experts representing three countries: Japan, the People's Republic of China, and Korea. These countries have been investing heavily in hydrogen, not just in Asia, but also globally. And we have speakers who will share deeper insights. This will be a dialogue session, so I'll ask them each a question, and you can also post questions to them after my questions to them. First, let's welcome Mr. Hiroki Yoshida, who's Deputy Director at the Agency for Natural Resources and Energy at the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, METI, in Japan. The question to Mr. Yoshida is, we just heard in the first half that Japan emphasizes reducing the cost of hydrogen to nearly the same level as conventional energy like gasoline and LNG. What are the challenges in terms of policy or infrastructure for shifting from conventional energy to green and hydrogen or hydrogen import? Mr. Yoshida, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Hiroki Yoshida from Hydrogen Strategy Office of METI Japan. First of all, I'm going to make a presentation on Japan's hydrogen strategy. Japan is the first country to formulate the basic hydrogen strategy in 2017. Prime Minister set 2050 carbon neutral declaration, and Japan positioned hydrogen as one of the priority areas in green growth strategy in 2020. In addition, Japan is trying to expand the amount of hydrogen introduction and reduce hydrogen costs through the Green Innovation Funds project and other government budget projects and private sector self-fund projects. Our target is shown bottom of this slide, focusing on volume and cost. As of volume, current approximately 2 million ton hydrogen, target is 3 million ton by 2030, 20 million ton by 2050. As for cost, currently 100 Japanese yen per normal cubic meter, target is 30 Japanese yen per normal cubic meter by 2030, 20 per normal cubic meter by 2050. Current hydrogen hydrogen is mainly from byproduct, we are now developing international supply chain and domestic production for upscaling and cost reduction. Japan's strategic energy plan revised in 2021, last year, October, shows updated power generation mix target toward 2030. It requires the improvement of more energy efficiency and deploy renewable energy. In addition, it allocates 1% for hydrogen and ammonia in 2030 power generation mix. This table shows rough roadmap for supply side and demand side. As for supply side, we are now developing international hydrogen supply chain and new domestic supply sources. So far, these are demonstration phase, but we are trying to make them as a commercial basis by 2030 and upscaling and diversification until 2050. As for demand side, transportation sector continue to roll over leading hydrogen demand. We are now seeking to promote introduction of FC trucks. We expected power generation sector will make large scale demand and it will contribute to hydrogen supply development, same to LNG. Hydrogen also has potential to decarbonize steel and chemical production process and heat demand. Our Minister Hagiuda established a new subcommittee for hydrogen policy in March. The subcommittee is a major way to expand the introduction of commercialization of hydrogen and ammonia. It focuses on the price differences with existing fuel and infrastructure development. Prime Minister Kishida stated in his April speech that he will take bold support measures regarding hydrogen policies. In 2080, Japan launched the Hydrogen Ministerial Meeting, HEM. We believe Hydrogen Ministerial Meeting is the most ideal meeting for hydrogen-related ministers and top executive to express and discuss directions and to build the hydrogen society and future initiative. Hydrogen Minister 2022 will be held in late of September 2010 this year. Thank you very much. This is my presentation, and now I answer your question in this timing. So the question I hear from moderator, our national strategy focus on cost. So first, I would like to emphasize that Japan focuses on ramping up hydrogen supply and demand in Japan. It means focus on not only green hydrogen from renewable energy, but also focus on hydrogen from other variety sources, including low carbon hydrogen. We expect accelerating actual use of hydrogen contribute to developing hydrogen-related technology, such as fuel cells technology and hydrogen-related infrastructure, including development, regulation, and standards. I have already mentioned in my speech, we are now developing international hydrogen supply chain and new domestic supply sources. We are now operating the liquid hydrogen demonstration project between Japan and Australia. Liquid hydrogen carrier completed in the world first maritime transport Australia to Japan in February 2022, including liquefied hydrogen loading and unloading. MCH, microcyclohexane, also has a potential as a hydrogen carrier. International hydrogen supply chain using MCH as a hydrogen carrier in the demonstration project was completed in June 2020 between Brunei and Japan. As for domestic production, we are conducting large-scale electrolyzer demonstration project. The demonstration project are underway to further increasing electrolyzer size, improving operation, and reducing cost. We are trying to make them as a commercial basis by 2030 and upscaling and diversification until 2050. In addition, we established new subcommittee for hydrogen policy. The subcommittee focused on the price differences between hydrogen and conventional energies and focused to infrastructure development. It contributes to actual use, promote actual use in hydrogen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yoshida. Excellent remarks and combined with slides as well as specific comments and response to my pointed question. Let's now move to Professor Yongping Zhai, who was formerly chair of the Energy Sector Group, also the Asian Development Bank, currently senior advisor at Tencent in China. Thank you for joining us from Beijing. The question to you is the strategy of the Chinese government, which has planned a phased approach to build the domestic capacity for the hydrogen industry. What is the role of the private sector, now you're wearing that hat, in creating that kind of market and competition to mobilize more investments in green hydrogen? Dr. Zhai, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Staram, for the question. Also, before I answer directly your question, I would like to give a little bit of background on the strategy itself in China. I don't have a PPT, but I hope I can still describe the strategy clearly for you and for the audience. First of all, China has set an ambitious target of achieving carbon neutrality by 2060. If we look at the different scenarios, we realize that if we want to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060, there got to be 10% of the emissions to be reduced through the use of green hydrogen. So that's the proportion or importance of hydrogen. In other words, without hydrogen, China would not be able to achieve carbon neutrality. So that's the first point as a background. With that background in mind, China has actually, as Sitaram, you mentioned, China's program for hydrogen. China's program for hydrogen actually we learned from Japan, from Korea, from other countries, and actually set our own phased approach to a future important role of hydrogen. So this phased approach includes three parts or three subcomponents in our general strategy. One is making sure that the hydrogen is actually part of energy supply solution as an effective way of storage, energy storage for meeting different, with growing share of renewable energy, as previous speakers in the opening part of this session about the wind to hydrogen. Actually, hydrogen should be used as a very effective way to store energy. So that's one thing from the supply side. And from the demand side, hydrogen can play a role that can be a solution in transport in many different uses, but first of all, transport. So making sure that hydrogen is used to meet some sectors that are difficult to decarbonize, like the heavy trucks and some part of the steel industry, for example. So that's the second part. And for China, I think for many countries the same, but for China it's very particular. When China proposed works on renewable energy or hydrogen, it's very important to build a full supply chain, manufacturing capacity for hydrogen. So Chinese strategy for hydrogen is to build a complete supply chain for hydrogen, from production of hydrogen, transport, distribution, and end uses. So the supply chain has to be in place. These are the three components of the hydrogen strategy in China. Now, there is a specific target in this program. China would like to actually, talking about transport, China would like to build 50,000 fuel cell vehicles. So basically the heavy trucks that can be effective way of reducing carbon emission in the transport sector, and producing, for that purpose, producing 200,000 tons of green hydrogen. And that will remove about 2 million tons of hydrogen CO2 per year. So that said, I would like to mention, to answer the question of our moderator, Sitaram, you mentioned what's the role of private sector. Last year, I'm still at ADB. I was on the bank side and supporting countries and private sector to go for renewable solutions, and including hydrogen. Now I'm on this private sector side. In particular, I'm actually in Tencent. Tencent is one of the major, I would say, leading big tech companies in China. And also Tencent is a major investor in many things. I think with Tencent as one example, how private sector can contribute to this, since we are high-tech technology companies, I would like to say there are many things private sector can do, but for us, we can support the hydrogen society through application of digital technologies. And digital technologies can be applied in three ways. One is to create digital twins for hydrogen production, hydrogen transportation, making sure that hydrogen, the full supply chain is actually used to full maximizing their capacity, but also most efficiently used. So digital twins can be used. Secondly, digital technology, in particular blockchain, can be used to trace the origin of the hydrogen, green hydrogen, making sure that hydrogen we receive, we consume, they're truly coming from renewable energy based production facilities. And hydrogen digital technologies with the platform we can create. Tencent is a specialist in that kind of platforms. We can actually contribute to making sure that green hydrogen can be part of the carbon trading system. So making sure that hydrogen is going to be a part of a participant from a technical point of view in the carbon trading system. So I think that's one example how private sector can do, in particular the digital technology companies, big tech companies like Tencent can contribute. Of course, I can mention how the private sector can contribute in terms of money. Indeed, we're looking at different emerging technology in this area, how we'll be able to put some money to support innovations, and that's for sure. We also provide X prize. It's like I wouldn't say Nobel Prize, but it's a prize Tencent launched to support the basic research and development that can cover hydrogen as well. So I think that's what I'd like to answer the question of Sitaram. But to conclude, everything we talk about green hydrogen would assume the renewable energy would be cheap enough so that we can produce green hydrogen meaningfully. How cheap it would be, some calculation, I think from previous speakers have saw some number like 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour of solar that can work. I think more or less in that range. I would say 2 cents, for example. If we can produce green solar energy or wind with that price, with that cost, 2 cents, US cents per kilowatt hour, then our green hydrogen can be competitive. so that we can actually realize everything I just talked about. So it's not going to be hydrogen on itself. It's going to be renewable energy development as a whole as a solution. So we cannot just talk about hydrogen. So that's all. Very final point. China is part of the international community. I hope that China will continue to share experience and learn from others. In many ways, research and development, and also I talk about the supply chain. If China can make everything much, much cheaper, and that will benefit the whole world. I do hope that this workshop today is a good opportunity, as many events are happening. It's a good opportunity for international cooperations and learning from each other. Thank you very much.
Excellent, very comprehensive points, starting from digital technology to bringing more money to the table, as well as to getting international cooperation to learn lessons. That brings us actually very aptly to Dr. Ji-Young-An. Welcome. She's our last but also young panelist, so I would like to ask her a question relating to the strategy that South Korea has, which Yongping Zai also spoke about, which other countries are also looking forward to learning from. So what are the lessons and learnings that we could get from South Korea's very targeted hydrogen usage strategy that you want to achieve by 2040? What does that mean for producers, exporters, particularly in developing countries in Asia? I see in the question chat box, there are a lot of questions from other countries in Asia. So over to you, Dr. An.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to introduce briefly about Korea's national plan for hydrogen economy. Korea established a national hydrogen economy policy a little bit early on and has been promoting various policies to transition from carbon economy to hydrogen economy. So Korea has constantly developed a concrete strategy and policies for implementing the hydrogen economy. For example, last November, we announced the master plan for implementing the hydrogen economy of Korea. It is the revised version of the hydrogen economy roadmap, which was announced in 2019. It suggests a comprehensive strategy for the entire life cycle of hydrogen. According to this master plan, Korea forecast hydrogen demand as 3.9 million tons in 2030 and 27.9 million tons in 2050. As you may know, it is essential to create government-led demand to foster the hydrogen economy at the initial stage. In that sense, Korea is implementing some policies to promote hydrogen use. In particular, Korea has high hydrogen demand target in the power generation sector and industrial sector to achieve the NDC target and net zero by 2050. The power generation sector is expected to consume the most hydrogen in 2050 in Korea. The power sector will consume about 13.5 million tons of hydrogen in 2050 through fuel cell power generation and hydrogen-powered gas turbines and coal-firing ammonia in coal power plants. The Korean government will introduce clean hydrogen portfolio standards to incentivize power generators and energy suppliers to use hydrogen. Also, the industrial sector aims to utilize about 10.6 million tons of hydrogen in 2050. The government is providing incentives to create a hydrogen industrial complex. It also supports the development of technologies that can reduce carbon emissions using hydrogen in steelmaking, petrochemical, and cement industry. To meet this demand for hydrogen, we must import about 82% of hydrogen demand from abroad in 2050. It is almost 23 million tons. So we aim to establish a global hydrogen supply chain with at least 40 regions in various countries. So international cooperation and joint projects are essential for Korea. From this point of view, the Asian region is an essential partner for Korea. Some Asian countries are rich in renewable energy resources and have a good condition for green hydrogen production. It would be great if we could collaborate with governments and companies in Asian countries to develop a joint hydrogen production project and produce it, and it will contribute to achieving carbon neutrality in both countries. Several Korean companies have already entered Malaysia's Sarawak region and started the green ammonia production business. It would be the benchmark case, I think, and it can strengthen the international cooperation so that many positive projects for both countries can be developed soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahn. We have several questions from the participants. Thank you all for sending your excellent question. Let's now start with the question pointed to Mr. Yoshida. In fact, there are many questions pointed to him, one relating particularly to the METI's strategies to particularly preventing the leaks, and how would you monitor? It's a kind of a specific question pointed to you. Mr. Yoshida, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. About leakage. Leakage is one of the challenges for using hydrogen. We understand. So far, actual device is FC vehicle and stationary fuel cells. Main product for using current society, and especially for FCV. Hydrogen refueling station put in the 70 megapascal high pressure hydrogen to input to the vehicle hydrogen tank. So that high pressure cause leakage potential, may have many potential to leakage. So Japanese law, especially high pressure gas law, required to using the special prevention tools for prevent leakage. So in Japan, so hydrogen refueling station is required to use special rubber seal, such as special rubber seal. So I have 35 megapascal, there is no problem, but over the 35 megapascal frequently cause leakage. So Japanese small medium company developed special rubber sealing put in the refueling station. And we understand joint point, some kind pipe to pipe, some connecting point is one of the most potential leakage point. So some company try to develop jointless pipe or some small pipeline inside a refueling station. So one of the address method is we developed special tool for prevent leakage. But and at the same time, Japan's high pressure law required some secure distance from facility to other facility. If hydrogen facility make or cause leakage, but still save other facility or human. So, but that safety issue is very important, but sometimes that requirement and some addressing some special to the other methods make a cost or inconvenience to using hydrogen. So we are very carefully to analyze and checking the current situation of using hydrogen. So, and we try to some part of regulation, we more device or some more low requirement for more convenient using hydrogen. So it's the current Japanese status. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a very helpful and very detailed response. A similar point, but from a different perspective, this is pointed to Dr. Yongping Zhai. In fact, it refers to the statement by the ADB president at the opening plenary on promoting and getting the role of scientists and engineers to overcome the technical challenges for hydrogen economy. However, there's a lot of negative commentary about from the naysayers that what is not possible. So, Professor Yongping Zhai, with your engineer's hat, could you please comment on this? What do we need to tell our participants?
Thank you, Sitaram. I also thank I recognize Steve Peters asked this question. I think my former colleague, I know well. And also, I'm glad to answer this question because this will give me a chance to show my understanding from a technical side, but the answer was not only from a technical perspective. Let me first say, there are indeed different views about the role of hydrogen in future energy system. The key concern has been if we do this, use hydrogen to serve many final use purposes, what will be the overall efficiency, technical efficiency of the energy system? Because you realize that we get green energy from solar and wind, from electricity, and then we get green hydrogen. Then from hydrogen, we go for final uses. Throughout this process, the overall efficiency will be much lower compared to if we use electricity, green electricity directly. However, and that may be valid, but however, as I said, in case of China, without hydrogen, China would not be able to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. That means there are some end uses you will not be able to use electricity to meet your purpose. You need to have some sort of transformation from green electricity to green hydrogen, and then with hydrogen you run the trucks, ships, or you go for green steel making process. So that's why we must stick to hydrogen in these cases that this hydrogen is indispensable. In this, if we can separate what is these specific cases and the rest of the situation, and it will be answer this question quite easily that actually there's not much different views. For some specific uses, hydrogen is the solution, so let's use it. And for some other uses, the question is about competitivity. If we can make hydrogen much more cost effective, don't forget that hydrogen can be used to store electricity from wind and solar, because you either waste completely those wind and solar power, or you store it and use it for future, even it's for electric uses. Even the efficiency is not so high, but we make that from, otherwise you would have lost those energy. So in that case, it also makes good sense for us to use hydrogen. So as a conclusion, there's not much real differences from a technical point of view, whether hydrogen is a solution for hydrogen economy. I think the answer is yes. The question is more from economic side, and also in some specific case, you don't have a choice. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to another question, which is of interest to several participants. I would like to ask first, all panelists can respond, but maybe I'll ask Dr. An to think about this answer for this question. This is regarding the role of the major economies like Korea, Japan, China. What is the knowledge transfer or support for other countries, developing countries, but at least in Southeast Asia, is hydrogen economy for the first world and the large economies, or what would the other economies look forward to? What can they benefit from? Dr. An, please.
Sorry, could you clarify the question?
The question is the hydrogen economy only for the wealthy countries? What about the less developed and developing countries? What can they benefit from? What would they get from the hydrogen economy?
Okay, as I mentioned before, less developed country, or for example, some countries in Southeast Asia, they have rich renewable energy resources, so they can lend their land to developed country, so they can collaborate with the developed countries with high technology, and they can develop a joint project for hydrogen production. And also, we are also Korea also considering the ODA project with the less developed country. So we can link the ODA project with the hydrogen production project, so it can benefit the less developed country as well, I think.
So Yoshida, any comments from you?
Thank you very much. I understand hydrogen is not only for developed country, but also for all country, including developing country. So Japan hosting hydrogen energy minister meeting, and it invite East Asia, invite countries, including East Asia countries. And I have several experience to participate in hydrogen-related event of ABEC Energy Working Group and Standard and Conformance Group. However, I felt there was still room for participants to develop sufficient understanding of hydrogen before practical actions. So I think today's event is very important for Asia Pacific region, and I think it is important to continue developing sufficient understanding of hydrogen in this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yongping, any comments from you? I also have a request from other speakers in the first session who want to make a comment on this specific point. Yongping,
Okay,
go ahead.
it's about the benefit to developing countries, right, of hydrogen. Yeah, I recall that when I was still at ADB a year ago, I wrote an article about making developing countries ready for a future hydrogen economy. As I said, that although clearly Japan, Korea, and some more developed countries are leading in this, but there's no exception that hydrogen is going to be part of low carbon solutions, as I explained earlier, because there are some areas you cannot avoid using hydrogen. In some other areas, you should use hydrogen to store wind and intermittent wind and solar energy. So that's good for developed countries, but same for developing countries. That said, there are also a huge potential to make hydrogen a tradable commodity. Like Japan have made LNG a tradable commodity in the past. And similarly, we can make hydrogen a part of international trading. And many developing countries, they have a very abundant hydropower resources, for example. If you look at Bhutan, Nepal, and some part of South Asia, and many other areas. So this hydrogen, hydropower can be used to produce green hydrogen, and making sure that hydrogen will become can be shipped to Japan, to other countries. If Japan can import from Australia, from Brunei, why not importing from some countries in Southeast Asia if it's produced by green sources? So I think making developing countries ready, hydrogen ready, that means short term, but also long term.
That's excellent. My colleague from the first session, Dr. Mi Tian, you have a comment on this? Please go ahead.
Oh, yes. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I do have the comments. I think the energy, in my mind, energy is the driving force of the modern society. So I think is an opportunity for every countries and also competitions there. So because hydrogen is not the resources source of energy, but a vector of energy, the storage, a large scale storage of wind power and solar energy. So I think this that's what today's events, and I think is really good to learn from each other where we are. I think it's we need to catch up with the hydrogen production, hydrogen storage, and as Professor Jai said about trading of the hydrogen. So it's not only about carbon emission reduction, but the future energy market and also the national energy security. Yeah, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us on time or just ahead of time. And thank all the panelists. Please join me in giving them virtual applause. And I thank them all for excellent comments and responding to as many questions. Let me then hand it back to my colleague, Dr. Dina Asgalieva, for closing the workshop today. Over to you, Dina.
Many thanks for Sitaram and all excellent speakers. I learned today a lot. So I would like to share with you what I promised at the beginning. Thanks to all our audience for excellent Q&A questions and also polling. So I would like to present polling results for the first question. The first question was, have you ever heard before this event about national hydrogen strategies? And majority of our audience actually haven't heard about national hydrogen strategies, and popularity is just growing. So I'm glad that this event covered that. And the second question was about which knowledge product you are more likely to use, because after this event for next year, we are planning some publications. So interestingly that 1/3 for book, 1/3 for journal article, and 1/3 for policy brief. Yeah, so we will plan for next year book, definitely, and maybe some other knowledge outputs like policy brief, e-learning possibly. Yeah, my key takeaways from today's event, I want to be briefly just to summarize what I keep taking points from me, that green hydrogen, although it's still expensive, more expensive than natural gas and more expensive than other energy storage technologies like batteries, but hydrogen has many applications. It's a versatile technology and can be used in applications where other technologies are less appropriate. For example, long-term seasonal energy storage or large-scale, like utility-scale energy storage. Hydrogen will be a good applications, and also heavy transportation, for example. The good news that cost of green hydrogen is falling, and hopefully it's getting closer to gray hydrogen. And as we heard from speakers, probably by 2030, we will see significant cost reduction. And that depends, that this forecast depends on the renewable energy cost reduction. So as renewable energy getting cheaper and cheaper, we can see that green hydrogen also will become cheaper. National hydrogen strategies, I think, very important. And we heard today cases from China, Republic of Korea, and Japan, and they can help to reduce cost and also provide supply and demand for green hydrogen. Number of countries with national hydrogen strategies actually growing. Last year, it doubled in 2021 comparing to 2020. Number of countries doubled with hydrogen strategy. And this year, we already see around 30 countries with national strategy, and also 25 countries are in line expected, according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance. We also learned today that without hydrogen, for many countries, it will be hard to achieve carbon neutrality. And that's countries which have net zero carbon neutrality target by mid-century. I recommend to consider hydrogen as a necessary technology for achieving this target, and also implementing national hydrogen strategy. And we can, for that, countries can learn from experience from Japan, People's Republic of China, Korea, and UK. And also good news for many countries with abundant renewable energy resources, that this is an opportunity to generate green hydrogen and then export or ship it to other countries with high demand for hydrogen. Unfortunately, we couldn't cover all questions today, but we definitely will use it for our work, especially on the book, and we will forward it to our speakers. Thank you very much. With that, I would like to, just on time, thank again all the speakers of today's event. This is very helpful, and this event definitely helps us to produce the book for the next year. I would like to remind again what Dean Tetsushi Sanobi in opening remarks invited everyone, all speakers, all audience, you are invited to contribute to ADBI call for papers on hydrogen. Deadline is end of June. So please contribute, and we will plan other events on hydrogen this year. You can follow us on social media, ADBI, or on ADBI website for events. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.